Hey everybody, in this vid I'm going to cover two prominent dogs of the past. One of them is considered the foundation dog for the modern day American Pit Bull Terrier, Tudor's Dibo. And the other one is maybe not so well known but just as prominent during his day, which would be Trahan's Rascal. Now Dibo was sired by Hubbard's Bounce and Heinzel's Bambi. Rascal was also sired by Hubbard's Bounce, and his dam was Corvino's Makeup. So they're bred a little different, but they were actually half brothers with different dams. And Dibo goes back to, he's got some Corvino in him too, via Bruce's Jerry. He's kind of a real loose line bred Bruce's Jerry by way of Hubbard's Gimp. You'll see Gimp on both sides of Dibo's pedigree. His dam, Heinzel's Bambi or Richeson's Bambi. Richardson was kind of a silent partner of Howard Heinzel. They shared a lot of dogs. They co-owned a lot of dogs. Richardson had his yard, and Heinzel had his yard, and they would trade dogs back and forth, do breedings back and forth, co-own dogs together or outright own dogs related to each other. And Rascal, his dam Corvino's Makeup, she's mostly the Williams blood, but she also has Bruce's Jerry in her, which would be he would be the sire of Corvino Shorty, and he was either the same dog as Gimp or a brother to Gimp. I believe he was a littermate to Gimp. So the dogs, not only being closely related, half brothers, they also had commonalities in their background, in their pedigree, which just shows that you know, the breeders or competitors that acquired dogs tried to get dogs from the same strains or the same bloodlines or the same breeders, because they were known to be good dogs, and you know, they combined it however they combined it, put them together. So a lot of them are related. Some of the dogs, it's even the same dog, they just have different names. You know, the new owner would put a different name on them. So with Dibo, you know, being such a prolific stud, he did have a pit career. Now a lot of people will say he was a 3-time winner. Even Tudor's known to mention that. I've never found his other 2 matches, but he did. I know he did win one. I believe it was under Bob O'Neill, and there's pictures of that match in the books. But whether he was a 1-time winner or a 3-time winner, he was still a great producer and still a pit winner. His brother was owned by Al Brown for most of his life, Arizona Pete. He's also mentioned as having won a bunch of matches, and I've never found evidence of that, although speaking with Heinzel, what Heinzel said is he did whip a lot of dogs. Now, whether they were rolls or off the chain or money matches or drop fights, whatever they were, he was a very good dog. And he did beat a lot of good dogs, the way Howard said it. Their sister, Langham's Lil, or Tudor's Lil, I know she won at least one match. That one's reported in the old Pete Sparks magazine. And she ended up dying. I think she got hit by a car. She died in an accident, so she didn't live that long. Richardson's Jerry would be another littermate to them. And speaking a little bit of Bambi, and I've mentioned this dog before, Lark. He was just a devastating animal. badass. Even before his career started, there's a letter that Heinzel wrote into the Your Friend of Mine, P. Sparks, and he mentions Lark. Talks about how he's such a very good dog. And there's one picture where he's got a dog spread eagled on his back, head twisted around, and he's just putting the finish to the dog. Heinzel said that took about 15 minutes. Some of Dibo's most famous, probably his most famous offspring were the three from the litter to Gordon's Red Lady: Champion Spike, Champion Buck, and Champion Jeff. Spike won 4 matches at a weight of probably 44 to 46 pounds, 43 to 46 pounds, something like that. Kept having to move up in weight because he was such a badass that people didn't want to fight him at his weight. They would bring dogs bigger. His last one was against a Corvino dog. Again, there's pictures of that match in the Pete Sparks magazine. He's actually, you can tell he's got a big old big mouthful of that dog in his mouth. And I think that one went over an hour. Most of his were short. Jeff won 3, at least 3, maybe 4. And Buck won 3 and lost 1. I believe the dog he lost to was Lo Lehman's Lido, I think, who was a littermate to Lo Lehman's Dolly. Dolly was a 6-time winner. I think Lido was a 4-time winner, 1-time loser. But I'm pretty sure that's the dog that Buck lost to. But either way, he was a 3 or 4-time winner himself. Those dogs are all prominent in Tudor breedings, in Ed Crenshaw's breedings, and Jimmy Robeson. If you look at Champion Catfish, she's half brother, half sister off of Buck. And then they took Catfish, bred her to Tombstone, which made Grand Champion Hope just a badass bitch by all accounts. So a lot of people use those particular dogs, and Spike, of course, being bred to Black Widow, and a lot of other females, just top dogs. One finishing killer off of Spike and Black Widow would be Maloney's Toot, said to be a multiple winner. At least 2 of them were reported. They didn't go over 20 minutes. Just a devastating dog. Another offspring would be Carver's Cracker. He was a 3-time winner, 1-time loser. I believe he lost to Hernandez, Jerome Hernandez, another Cajun. A lot of good dogs. He's the same one who had the sire of Dibo, Zeke. That's where you get that term Zeke Black Widow stuff, or Spike Black Widow, or Dibo Black Widow. They were all bred to, not all of them, but Zeke was bred to Black Widow. I mean, not Zeke. Spike was bred to Black Widow. Dibo was bred to Black Widow. Even Trahan's Rascal, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit, was bred to Black Widow. Kern's Lucky was bred to Black Widow. And at some point, those dogs were kind of the offspring and progeny. Those dogs were bred together different ways, and to keep that stuff going. Carver's D and Lasso, you'll see them also offspring of Dibo. Heinzel's Clancy would be another one. He won 5 and lost 1. Lou Johnston was an old dog man by the time I met him. But during that time, he was just starting out, and he came out gangbusters. He's the one who had that goofy dog. He had another dog named Siwash. That's the one that beat Clancy, Heinzel's Clancy, under kind of precarious circumstances. Heinzel said that he had bitches in heat on the yard, and Clancy didn't act right, and he was affected by that, and he lost to Siwash. Well, they rematched, and he ended up beating Siwash in a rematch. So that's something interesting. A good daughter of Dibo. Also, her matches were reported back in the day. Heinzel's Polly. Polly was a 2-time winner. I believe she lost 1, but she had this distinction of beating the same female twice. I forget her name, but it might have been Hempfield that went after her. I can't remember, but she beat a female, and the owners of that female didn't feel she was up to par, whatever the reason was. Anyways, they rematched the same two females, and Polly beat her almost the same time, real close, within minutes of beating her the first time. She beat her the second time. I'm not sure if it was shorter or a little bit longer, but it was right around the same time. But Polly would be another offspring of Dibo that was well known back in the day. Uh, uh, Tudor's Red Bill was another son of Dibo. If you look up Dibo's pedigree, there's a picture, and it looks like Dibo because he was real close to the same in appearance of Dibo. But that picture is of Red Bill. It's not Dibo. It's Red Bill. He was a son of Dibo. Macross Snowball. Anybody familiar with the Zebo dog, Grand Champion Zebo, great dog? Uh, he's a son of Macross Snowball. I mean, he's a grandson of Macross Snowball. Snowball was a son of Dibo. He produced Lonzo's Andy, or I believe it was Andy. Anyways, Dibo's sire, Oki, that's who it is. Greenwood's Oki or Lonzo's Oki. Not Andy, it's Oki. He was the sire of Zebo, and he was also the son of Snowball. That's where you see some of that Dibo stuff up in the northeast, or even the southeast, where Zebo was born, moving up to the Great Lakes area with Dave Adams, and proliferated there. There's always been kind of a knock on Zebo. People say he didn't produce, that well and this and that. That's not true, because what happens with Dibo dogs, and Tudor said this, Carver wrote about it, he mentioned it in a letter. You can't inbreed Dibo dogs. It doesn't work. Now that doesn't mean they didn't produce some game dogs, or there weren't some that people used off of them, but they just weren't good enough. People frowned on the people that actually bred the stuff, frowned on it. But you line breed it, loose line breed it, even tight line breed it, you can get some good dogs. And all these dogs I'm mentioning off as Dibo, most of them were crossed. Some of them loose line bred, like Zebo, what you would call Zebo bloodline, would be loose line bred. But he gets a lot of knock, even though he produced, Champion Willie, Champion Ruby, Champion Nipper, Champion Diamond Jim, Z-Boy, a lot of different ones. Stinson and Step had a whole yard of them dogs that they used to compete with. So, unless you go through and most of the breedings or all of the breedings, and you see how they're bred, the same thing that's said about Zebo could be said about almost any bloodline. If you heavily inbreed them, or if you inbreed them, sometimes it doesn't work. And that's why they're crossed, especially if they're already tight bred, line bred like Zebo was, or line bred even like Dibo himself, or Trahan's Rascal himself. They're already based off certain dogs, so tightening up on it is not necessary. People like to do that because they like keep stuff pure, what they call pure, and this and that. But it's not the best form of breeding if you want to produce athletes, if you want to produce competitors. You might get game dogs, but you can get the same thing with athletes and competitors, game dogs. You just have to know how to do it, and you just have to follow the traits. So a lot of dogs, take Dirty Mary, for example. If you go back and look at all of Boyle's breedings, almost every one of them, after he made his breedings, has Dirty Mary in it. The only one that didn't probably was Queen of Hearts, but she had Bobby Jr. But they did take Queen of Hearts stuff, breed it back to the Dirty Mary stuff. So throughout all his breedings, you have Dirty Mary here and there. But Dirty Mary herself, other than Bobby Jr., which would be kind of line breeding Boleo, because Dirty Mary has Red Baby, and she's a daughter of Boleo. And Bobby Jr. was kind of heavy Boleo. All the other ones are crossed. Dirty Mary to Bumper, Dirty Mary to Cherokee Chief, Dirty Mary to Oiler Jr., Dirty Mary to uh, Dutch Boy Jr. stuff. And then what he did after that, he's put all that stuff together. So it's pretty heavy Dirty Mary, but it has all these crosses in it. That's what you could do with almost any bloodline, and what you should do with almost any bloodline. The most successful guys, that's what they did. You key on a certain bloodline or certain dog, and you have to throw crosses in there or loose line breedings in there. That's what made Dibo and Rascal. So if you repeat it, you're going to have the same kind of success. And so that's just a little bit, I get tired of hearing people knocking Zebo and this and that. That comes from some articles that some people wrote, and people just repeat it over and over. There's been a lot of people, that been successful with it, not just Stinson and Stepp, but Matt McGee and Frank Roca and Dave Adams himself and Bobby Love, and a lot of people use that stuff in there. Even Super Nat, that's where Grand Champion Ace comes from. His dam was heavily bred Zebo, but most of them are crosses, or they're line bred. They're not inbred, and you could say the same thing for almost any dog. They're not. You don't get the best success with heavily inbreeding them. Now there's good parts to having heavily inbred dogs, like Heinzel or Lonzo stuff, if you want to say, or even the Red Boy stuff. When you cross it, because they're holding so much blood, because it's concentrated, the traits are so concentrated, when you cross it, bam, you got something. And that's what people did. Because all those inbred dogs, you're going to find faults in them. And you're not going to have a bunch of them that come out at a top level. It doesn't mean they're not any good. They are. And if they hold gameness, or they hold some trait like mouth or strength or something like that, and they're lacking in other areas, what you do when you breed those dogs is you're trying to pull that trait. You're trying to pull what they're known for. Mouth, gameness. Could be air, like with the Boleo dogs. But you're going to have some structure problems. You're going to have even some temperament or health problems with them. So you cross them and bang, you got it. Same thing happened with the Heinzel dogs. They were heavily inbred, but you cross them to a lot of different stuff, it works. Because they're so heavily based on Dibo. And Dibo crosses good with almost anything. So moving on, even Boudreaux's Blind Billy was a son of Dibo, and Tudor's Frito. Al Brown, I think he matched Frito. I'm pretty sure he did. One of his matches is recorded in Pete's Barch magazine. I think it was Al Brown that conditioned and handled him. Starch Crybaby. If you listen to or have listened to Don Mayfield's tapes, or you've seen writings by Don Mayfield, he'll mention Crybaby. Evelyn Start was she was more like a sports woman, not so much being a dog woman, even though she had invested interest in different dogs like Crybaby and like maybe White Rock or even Spike. She bankrolled them, but she also been on cockfights and all kinds of stuff. But she was around a lot. She knew the right people. She knew who to get involved with. She knew which were good dogs and which weren't. And she owned some good ones too. So Crybaby would be another one. Speaking of White Rock, he was a 5-time winner. Just a devastating dog. After he won 5, I forgot who it was, but they went up to Jimmy Wimberly and said, "Hey, Jimmy, that dog's won 5 fights in a year." And Jimmy said something to the effect, "Well, I hadn't even noticed, or I wasn't cognizant of it," something to that effect. He hadn't even realized that he had won that many that fast, But White Rock was another son of Dibo, one of his most famous. Harold's Champion Topper would be another one. He was a 4-time winner, son of Dibo. He had the distinction of losing to Trahan's Country Boy, who was a son of Rascal. I'll get into him in a little bit, Uh, and then here's something though. This really is not a Dibo dog, or it's not Dibo, but what he was a half brother Dibo, a dog named Adolf, Heinzel's Adolf, or Tudor's Adolf, or whatever it was. He was a multiple winner. He's out of Richardson's Bing and Heinzel's Bambi. So that's one of the more famous sons of Bambi, which is not Dibo, besides Dibo. That was a good dog. He was handled by at least 3 different dogmen, known dogmen. Uh, Farrell, he was one of them. Greenwood was another one. Wembley was another one. So he kind of traveled around in different people's hands. Different people handled and conditioned him. And there's detailed reports of his matches by each one. Um, in the old Peace Bars magazine too, It's interesting to go back and look, and you get a first-hand account of how these dogs were actually competed with, how they fought, everything about them. And sometimes the dogs are more than what you think they were, or better than what you may think about them, and sometimes they weren't. They're not as good as you've been led to believe. And it's only opinion. You would have had to been there, but at least you get to see some action shots. You get to see somebody that was at ringside and wrote it all down and followed it. Uh, and Adolf was one of those. He was a brindle and white dog, well put up animal, good looking dog, hard mouth. Won short times and long, went some distance. But I just want to mention him because he was a son of Bambi that made the grade and was out there. When we talk about Rascal, like I said, he was a half brother to Dibo, both being sired by Bounce. And he has Shipley's Red Jerry, Fly of Panama, Bruce's Jerry, Corbino's Gimp, all those similar stuff. There's some crosses in there with the William blood and Anderson blood. Bill Anderson. There's a picture of Bill Anderson, Howard Heinzel, and John Fonseca. Picture of 3 of them standing there together in Heinzel's yard, and you could tell Bill he's the oldest one. He's kind of crouched over because he's up in age. I would guess he's in his late 80s, maybe even 90s at that age. He was pretty old, still getting around. But he bred some good dogs too. There were a lot of good breeders down in the southwest area. They used to call those Dibo dogs, or dogs from Heinzel, Arizona Aces, because so many of them came out of there. That's where White Rock was from. Dibo himself, Frito and Cracker, and a lot of the Dibo stuff, came from there. Fontenot's Kino, Ruben B had a champion dog. I forget his name right now. Went well over 2 hours. Just a lot of them, T.L. Williams, all that stuff. Bobby Williams and Bobby Smith and them. A lot of Heinzel dogs, Mormon Jimmy, Dwight Stubbs. A lot of those, rest in peace, Dwight. A lot of them guys down there had a lot of that blood, along with Wiz Hubbard being down there, Williams. A lot of good dog, man. When they get older, they look for that more arid temperature, to combat sometimes the ailment they have. A lot of these guys like Heinzel and Hubbard, they're from the Northeast, and it gets real cold there. So when they get up in age and they retire, they might want to move down. That's why a lot of them went to Arizona, because of that dry air. And it was said a lot of people with tuberculosis, which they called consumption back in the old West, that's why they went to Arizona, for a change of climate, where that cold weather didn't affect their lungs as bad, And most of them end up dying, like, the story with Doc Holliday, Tombstone, and all that, But it gave them a little bit more life, They lasted longer down there than they would have in a more colder, cooler climate. So there's a lot of great dogs, and good dogs and great dogmen from that area that either were from there or moved there. You know, Heinzel was from Chicago. He moved to Arizona. But, you know, several of them. Rascal, uh, he's not as well known. And unless you're, you know, what I would say a true fancier, you know, you wouldn't know most of his offspring. But they were just as good as some of the ones that Dibo himself produced. And some of them were in some of the best matches in Cajun country and all that area, deep south, as were any other dogs of the time. Some of his offspring would be Elias's Pistol and Trahan's Beauty T. You can see Pistol behind Boomerang, you know. And another one, probably one of the most famous, who has kind of a story behind it, would be Trahan's Country Boy. He won 4 and lost 1. Or he won 3, had a draw and lost 1. Something along those lines. But what's interesting is, I believe it was his first, I think it was his first match. He quit in a short amount of time. He was a young dog. He quit. Whatever the story is behind that, didn't pan out. And he had heartworms. But after that, he won a long match, and he's the one who actually beat Harold's champion Topper, who was a son of Dibo. He had a good litter. His litter mate, one of them was Trahan's Cajun. Again, a very famous match back in the day, where you have the North versus the South, Cajun being from the South, Komasinski's Rocky being from the North. That match was actually taped on, I believe, 33 millimeter film. It went 2 hours and 12 minutes. It's reported in Pete Sparks magazine. There's pictures and everything where Cajun, just at the end, you just don't have no more. He walks up real close to Rocky, takes the count. You know, he busted Rocky up, and Rocky just outgamed him basically. But he was one from that litter, the same litter that produced Country Boy. Another one would be Thibodeau's Ruby. Ruby won a long match, real exciting match if you read the report. She's a litter mate to Cajun and Country Boy. Another son of Rascal would be Trahan's Marciano, I think was his name. His match is reported there too. He had a tough match, and he probably had more, you know. Of course, named after Rocky Marciano, the famous heavyweight champion. But Country Boy, Cajun, and Ruby were litter mates. Most of those dogs were black. They had some white on them. Some had a stripe. Some had patches. But a lot of those dogs were black. I know Ruby and Cajun and Country Boy were mostly black. Hernandez Chief is another son of Rascal that's kind of well known. He's off of Rascal and Black Widow. He's one from that breeding. He produced Barefield's Polly. Robert Barefield was an old-time dog man, real top dog man back in the day. Polly was known to be a very game female. I don't know if she produced anything. She had a litter mate named Boudreaux's Deaf Beth. I don't know what became of her. And a lot of these dogs, what happens is, because they're competing, sometimes they don't survive. Or they may produce and then something happens to them, an accident or whatever, and they're lost, you know. Or a lot of these dogs, being from the deep south, contracted, you know, heartworms at a time when there wasn't any medicine for heartworms, you know. So a lot of them would die young. I believe Pit General had heartworms, or at least that's what, you know, some people speculate. Tombstone definitely had heartworms and died from it. Tudor's White Rock definitely had heartworms and didn't live for a long time after he was sold to the Cubans, you know. So a lot of these dogs Uh, that's what happened to them back in the day. That's why you don't see them living to be very old age or producing a lot of dogs. That was one of the big deals, kind of like what parvo did with us, and then later on coronavirus, and then even after that babesia. You know, they're debilitating diseases, take dogs' lives, or they're made so unhealthy that they don't live very long, or it just stops their production. So I would put Trahan's Rascal right on the same level as Tudor's Dibo, even though Tudor's Dibo is more famous and you know well deserved, and Dibo probably produced a lot more pups, or at least a lot more of them were spread out, where the Cajuns were kind of closed in. They didn't breed, let their dogs out a lot. Trahan at one time he had Black Widow himself there. And just a lot of them dogs. The Cracker dog I mentioned, who was a son of Dibo, who lost to Jerome Hernandez. I believe that match went 3 hours. He didn't survive that. I think uh, I know Spike lived to be an older dog, 12 or 13 years old. And but I'm not sure about Buck and Jeff. I think Jeff lived to be an old dog too, but I don't think Buck did. But as far as I'm concerned, those two dogs, Dibo and Trahan's Rascal, in their lifetime, they were the two best studs of their time. And you'll see, if you go back in your peds far enough, you'll see both of them back there probably at some point or another, even if it's just a little tiny bit back there. Some more pronounced, but still, they deserve recognition and to be remembered in the history of the Pit Bull Terrier. Again, thanks for listening. Take care.